Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zebra Talk, the podcast where we shine a little light onto the lives and the untold stories of the people who slide on their knees and count the threes. That's right, I'm talking about the referees, and today I'm joined by somebody who I know very well by reputation, but almost not at all, but actually, person to person. He's a huge figurehead in the mainland European professional wrestling community, more specifically in the German professional wrestling communities, the COO of WXW. Please welcome Tassilo Jung. How are you, Tassilo?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure. I'm very, very happy to get to learn a little bit more about the mainland European scene, because I feel like a lot of attention has been put onto the United Kingdom, and
Mhm.
rightfully so. It's had a long, illustrious career or history, whatever you want to call it. But not a lot is known about mainland European wrestling. So let's go ahead and dive into your story. Let people know who you are a little bit and how you first became associated with professional wrestling.
Yeah, well, you've already stated my name, so I'm Tassilo Jung. I've been refereeing since 1999. I've been a wrestling fan since 1994, so kind of a late starter. At that time, there still was a German/Austrian wrestling scene,
Mhm.
mainly Catch Wrestling Association, run by Otto Wanz, and I didn't know anything of it, like
Okay.
nothing. I never went to a show. I didn't know it existed until it was pretty much over. Funnily enough, I recently dug through some of my old stuff when moving, and I found this autographed picture of Ulf Hermann. He was briefly in ECW as Hermann the German
Okay.
and was one of the bigger names in CWA. I had no idea who he was and why I had his autographed card. It doesn't make sense to
Sure.
me. So yeah, I started watching New Japan on Eurosports, then looked it up. I looked up. So okay, this is called wrestling. Where else is it? And at this time, you had wrestling every single day on TV. It was great. You had,
Sure.
I think, 5 or 6 days of WCW and 2 days of WWF and 2 days of New Japan. So I could watch as much as I liked. Um, I started writing about wrestling for fanzines at that time. So stuff that you would print out and send to people's houses. And
Right.
I have no
Were you a
idea what the
part
reach of this was.
were you a part of the E-Fed culture and all that?
Oh yeah, massively.
Okay. Awesome.
I ran my own not even EFED, but still at the time where you ran it per snail mail.
Hmm.
So as a, I want to say 14-year-old, I had like 120 people playing in my weekly per mail federation.
Nice. So it
And
was pretty
actually,
successful too. Yeah.
yeah, like it actually made me, I think, 60, 70 Deutschmark by then,
Hmm.
which for a 14-year-old was significant money
Yeah,
because it was
absolutely.
far more than my allowance.
Right.
So yeah, I did that for a while. I think I did like 50 weeks of those.
Mhm.
Then once I got online, I got to eFeds and then went insane by doing that, like really insane.
Sure.
Um,
It's pretty
and
amazing to hear how much content you had going on in your country at the time. Obviously, Germany is a very, developed country and everything, but just
yeah,
the idea of, the internet is still kind of in its infancy at the time that we're discussing. Just the idea that you have things from WWF, WCW, New Japan, like you had stated, that were all,
mhm.
regularly circulating your televisions is pretty amazing.
And there were like New Japan wasn't, but WCW and WWF were on tour all the time,
Hmm.
especially in 1993, 1994. It was right when the first big steroid scandal broke and
Hmm.
when wrestling went down in the States. So they went over here and they went to every single smaller city. I saw WCW with Glacier and Mortiz and Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and a highly advertised NWO main event, which of course was Sean Waltman and I
Sure.
want to say Virgil, but I
Okay.
saw them in front of 200 people in the small town. So they went over here a lot, and they also contributed to catch wrestling dying out.
Hmm.
So by the time that, because American wrestling was exciting and highly produced and on television, and German wrestling was very good wrestlers, but wrestling in rounds and doing very believable wrestling, and it was getting to the point where it was outdated and people wouldn't
Sure.
come anymore.
You guys almost
So
have that old 50s style of wrestling that, had kind of created what
yeah,
we have now, but without the kind of life and vibrance that had been injected into television American wrestling yet.
yeah, it was all very, very old fashioned. Like there was this parade at the beginning of every show where all the wrestlers would enter the ring to a theme that kind of resembles the Doink theme, I want to say.
Okay.
It was called the Mark of the Gladiators.
Okay.
It was, and then the ring announcer would spend 20 minutes telling stories about all the wrestlers. And then they would do 5 matches, and every couple they would run weeks and months in the same town every single night. So you would do very little to be able to follow that the next night.
Sure. Kind of reminds me a lot of like when professional wrestling originated back in like the circus and carnival days. It was like actually like a big elaborate like a show, not so much like we're telling a wrestling show, but like this is a big, like you're saying, like a circus almost.
Yeah, it was in a tent. This wasn't in arenas or venues, but in a tent on a big square. So when that died out, I got the chance to get into wrestling, but then there was no wrestling scene anymore. There were like the tournaments had stopped. Most of the wrestlers, the good ones, had either gone to other countries or quit their career, and about no one bothered of passing on any in-ring knowledge, let alone promoting knowledge.
Sure.
So my first couple of shows were mainly groups of people who like to play wrestling, dress in their favorite wrestlers' t-shirts. If you had jeans and sneakers and Jeff Hardy shirt, you'd be good to go. Like either gear, no proper training where else. So everything was very, very backyardy. And I got in my first show because I was writing for one of those fanzines, and they ran a show with a promotion or a youth group who played wrestling in their local gymnasium. And they're like, hey, show is 2 days from now. We don't have a referee. Do you want to do this? I'm like, do I have to train for this? Nah, just come by, bring a shirt. So I bought a dress shirt, and I came by there and I helped them carry this 6.5 by 6.5 meters WWE sized boxing ring.
Okay.
From the promoter's house to the venue.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to hit my hand on that the whole evening, because there was neither a spring nor padding nor nothing. But yeah, it was, being in wrestling was the greatest.
Yeah. I'll bet as much as it like, felt, like looking back on it in hindsight and seeing all of these different things that were just like, oh man, what were we doing? But like at the time, it must have been like the most exciting thing in the world for you, like. Absolutely.
Like my first match was of course at this time, like the same guys who wrestled like 4 or 5 times per night, because they didn't have many wrestlers, they didn't have many shows, and they like to get to the ring.
Yeah.
So in my first match, they called this elaborate finish where there was a blind tag, and one team saw it and the other team didn't, and one team took advantage. But of course, they blew the spot.
Of course.
Yeah, I listened to it like, yep, I'm going to follow along. I'll do what they want. I count the finish, and then I come backstage. No one of the 40 people in attendance had noticed it, of course.
No.
But one of the guys was like, yo, you're my hero referee now. You got to go on tour with me next week to this village you've never heard of. I'm like, yep, yeah. Sign me up. It's great.
Sure,
I'll do that.
I'm with you, brother. I'll let's go. Where's the car?
Yep, I'll drive to Wisselhövel with you. No problem.
Very cool. So like, because of like the nature of, the climate that professional wrestling had in your country, before you had become involved, things almost kind of like started over from scratch. So you've actually been able to experience what it's like that a lot of people are still experiencing now, to have a completely brand new blossoming like wrestling community from its infancy. Like, tell me a little bit more about like where you went to after this first, like he's telling you, jump in the car with me, let's go off to this town you've never heard of. Where do you go from there? Is it like just full tilt, I'm a ref, now I'm growing the community, or you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out? What was your experience like?
I definitely want to do this. The guy offered me to come by the gymnasium he was living next to every Saturday that I didn't have a show. And he would train me. So he would put a couple of mats there. And, okay, this is how you take a bump. This is how you do a side lateral takeover. Not that he really knew, right? But sure. Yeah, he'd still pass on whatever he knew, because he was one of the better backyarders at the time.
Right. And a lot of people want to look down on that, and like rightfully so, when you have like a fully developed wrestling scene like you do now, and like the States have. But when that's all there is, that's all there is. Like somebody has to be the person that like tries to extend that knowledge to other people, and even if they aren't properly trained, like we're seeing it in China now, we're seeing it in South America and a lot of other places. The Nords have a really big blossoming wrestling community going on. Where like if you didn't have Joe Schmo backyarder who was trying to teach his friends how to be better wrestlers, then You just don't have a wrestling scene.
right? And I feel at every given time, what you know right now about wrestling is the most you've ever known about it.
Hmm.
So of course, hindsight 2020, yeah, that wasn't the best guy to get trained by, that wasn't the best way to get into it. But on the other hand, at this time, it was the best I knew, and also not that there were any other options. So
Sure.
you would try to get on the show once a month and drive wherever. And some of those shows had like maybe one or two professional wrestlers on there. As I said,
Yeah.
Wolf Herman was still around at this time, and when you could get in the ring of one of those, you would try to learn from them.
Sure.
The guy who rented the ring to most of the shows that didn't use boxing rings was this old German promoter, Gerd Fullen. He was very old. He didn't care much. He
Okay.
came to the show, helped setting up the ring, yelled at everyone, went to any bar in town, got drunk, tore down the ring, and drove home with his trailer. But he liked me for a reason and gave me a couple of pointers on how to be a referee. Even small stuff like, yeah, come a little faster. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. And now I go to the bar and get drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So that very much helped. I know for Gerd shows, Robert Brooks had worked when he was in Germany, but Doc Dean worked there. Liverpool Lads were one of his attractions when they still ran shows before they went to CWA, for example. And from there, stuff would just grow. I would volunteer to help wherever I could.
Mm-hmm.
I had a car at the time, which helped because I could drive wherever, and it was a big enough car to fit 5 people in there, and not comfortably,
So
but
that's
well
gold
enough,
wrestling.
right?
Yeah.
You need that. Like, don't get a 2-seater. It's a mistake.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to somebody about how they had a nice championship belt back in the 90s when like it was, you know, like thousands of dollars to get a nice championship belt. And they were talking about how like that, like a car, like, you know, whatever else, like a passport sometimes, you know, like you never know what those little boxes that you check off are actually going to lead to like an immense amount of opportunities just because like there are so many people that don't have that. Let's
Funny
talk
you
a
should
little.
mention that.
Go ahead.
The guy who trained me had a nice title belt. He had one of
Okay.
those WCW belts, so he could politic his way into being the champion wherever.
Yeah.
And of course, never drop it because, hey, yeah, I'm happy to drop the title, but I'm not giving it to anyone else.
It's my belt, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Let's talk a little bit about what your loop was actually like at the time. You know, like obviously the majority of my listeners are going to be from the States, so it'll be a good opportunity for people to get a little bit of a German geographic lesson.
Cool. At this time, there were a couple of companies, but most of them would run a show or two and then fold.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
nobody had like their fixed building. I think WXW in 2001 was the first company to actually have a building where they ran all the time, a couple of times a year at least. I would do whatever I could in Germany and very much all across Germany. I lived around Cologne, so Holland was very, very close. So I did whatever shows I could pick up in the Netherlands. I started when Swiss wrestling started in late 2001. I tried to get on all of their shows and parlayed that into going to Switzerland once a month, which was cool.
Sure.
Austria was hard to get into because it was all big old school guys. So
Yeah.
I got in with one of them. So I started doing Austria in 2001, 2002 because I volunteered to do, I think, a flood benefit show for free. And then the guy liked me because I was on time and nice enough and took pride in my work rather than just hanging out. So he brought me in for all the shows then. That helped. And then eventually, I want to say that's rather 2003, 2004, then French wrestling started. Like we started with younger guys. And I could get into 2 of their promotions. One is ICWA, still around. One is 2FC, which aren't around anymore. So I could get into shows from France that I really didn't mind doing those 14 hours one-way trips, which for continental Europe is a lot, and people really mind doing those.
Yeah.
That's not America.
It's pretty wild how much people even in the States mind drives like that. Like I was living in San Francisco in Northern California for the majority of my career so far. And the majority of my work was in Southern California, which is about a 10-hour bus ride for me. It's like a 5-hour drive. But yeah, like a 10-hour bus ride. And I would be in Los Angeles and try and give other people in Los Angeles a hand to an opportunity to the show that I was in. And they would go, oh, well, that's an hour away. I don't know if I want to go there. I'm like, yeah. What? What do you mean? It just took me 10 hours to get down here. You don't want to drive an hour?
Yeah, that's real, right? But uh, over time, we had a couple of first American wrestlers that came over here and took an interest. Like Chris Hero was instrumental in that because I think he saw an opportunity to be, of course, a bigger star than he was in America at the time,
Sure.
and he also saw he could grow something here.
Yeah,
So
you could have
he would,
influence.
yeah, he was brought in like every month or 2 months, then ran a training camp, which usually the
Hmm.
same guys like Cesaro and Ares and Mark Rudong and Emil Sitochi, those guys visited. And then Chris took all of us under his wing and helped us in becoming better. And then you had this group of people who didn't mind to train, who
Hmm.
didn't mind to drive wherever. So you have the same crew that went to all the shows in all the surrounding countries. That really
Sure.
helped.
And you
Um,
immediately start seeing that that like almost next tier of the people on the community that you're operating with. It's like you know that there's the boys, right, and there's everybody, but
yeah,
then there's always going to be that next tier of people. Like, okay, these are the
yeah,
people that are traveling everywhere. These are the people that are hungry. These are the people that are probably going to get it signed at some point.
yeah. That
Uh,
that that really helped. Chris always lived with me when he was over here.
mhm.
So at one point he offered, hey, if you ever want to come by Kentuckiana and spend
Sure.
a vacation there, I'm happy to have you. And of course I was like, yep, I'll go to Indiana and Kentucky, no problem.
Yeah.
I can be around IWA, which was great at that time because that's what I was watching. And I could do like 8, 9, 10 wrestling shows in 2 weeks, which is what I would get in 2 or 3 months in Europe. So that
Yeah,
of
so
course
like
really
just an
helped.
insane opportunity for information to just soak in and experience it,
Yeah,
people you can meet, networking. Yeah, very
yeah, and
cool.
this is the best trip I've ever spent from the time of getting better and socializing with people and getting out there to just getting to know people. Like a lot of those guys we've brought onto WXW later on. A lot of the guys I've met again at different venues. Like for example, I first met Nigel McGuinness at uh, Ted Petty 2003. I refereed him and Brad Bradley.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, we liked talking together and working together. And then I refereed on a couple of indie shows. And a few years later, we get asked to come by the Olympia in Liverpool for Ring of Honor to set up a business agreement with WXW.
Hmm.
And on the way there, we stop at a gas station because, of course, we fly into London because it's cheaper than rather than flying to Liverpool, which
Sure.
or Manchester, which would have been good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we stop at a gas station and get a bucket of fried chicken, of course, because you couldn't get fried chicken in Germany at the time.
Yeah.
And then Nigel runs into me, him and Bobby Cruz, and Nigel like, oh, cool, you're here. You come by the show, and I'm like, yep, there's really no other reason to be in the UK right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let me talk to Gabe and Alex Chang and see what's what. And I ended up not being booked and still refereeing this iconic Nigel and Danielson match at the show.
Mhm.
And it all started because I didn't mind going to Kentucky, Indiana, and spending 2 wonderful weeks there.
It's wonderful. You never know what kind of like opportunities are gonna open up, just by like the simplest of decisions and, just being willing to let life take you down the path that life wants to take you down. I've always kind of tried to live with this mantra of like, say yes to life. When life puts an
Yeah,
opportunity in front of you, when life opens a door, walk through it, see what happens. Like worst
yeah,
case scenario, you kind of have to pick up the pieces and maybe it doesn't go super well, but sometimes it leads to this.
yeah. Like one of the old school French promoters, like they always ran the exact same shows every year in the same villages,
Mhm.
and they also had a couple of standing contracts in Africa where they would, for example, run in La Réunion or run in Cameroon and whatever. And some of the newer French promotions try to get those deals from them by just being cheaper. So at
Sure.
one point we got us, hey, do you want to go a week to Algeria?
Mhm.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely, I'll
why
do
wouldn't
that.
I want to go to Algeria?
Yeah. Do you want to go to Cameroon in 2 weeks, but you would have this vaccination and this and this and this? So like, yeah, one of those vaccinations I already have from Algeria.
Sure.
We ended up didn't we never found any guys to go there. Like we ended up going to Cameroon with the promoter's brother, two wrestlers and myself. Everybody else didn't want to go there because they either didn't feel safe enough, which I absolutely understand,
Sure.
or because they didn't have the vaccinations. But yeah, I took that and ended up refereeing pretty much in the jungle and wrestling there because they didn't have any wrestlers.
Man, that is a very different experience than what you had thought you were getting into. But like, kudos to you for just like we said, walking through the door that life opens up for you. Um, let's chat a
Yep,
little
like
bit about how
for that.
you go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, let's talk a little bit. Obviously, you're traveling all over the world at this point. You're becoming very involved with, a number of very high-profile wrestlers, even at the time, which have become even more high-profile wrestlers at this point. Um, when did you really realize, or was it immediate that like you knew that you wanted to do this as like a lifelong career? When was the part where, like it was that transitional moment from like this isn't something that I want to do with my friends. This is something that I'm doing for the rest of my life. What was that experience like for you?
I feel I'm the type of person who sticks with something really easily. I don't change my hobbies or interests or state of mind too often. So I knew very early on, hey, if I can do that for a long time, I want to stick with this. But at that time, very much there was no way to make a career out of this. For the
Sure.
first 2 or 3 years, if you got to the point where you got some gas money, that was great. And
Yeah.
I think even until 6, 7 years, 8 years in, I didn't make serious money. But then I stepped away from the weekend with, hey, I got my gas money and I had some friend where I could crash at, and I got like, I don't know, 50, 60, $70 for that. And
Sure.
so that wasn't a career, but something that I really enjoyed doing.
It's
I
something you could get
feel,
by with.
yeah, no, not at all. Like I got by because I lived at home with my parents supported me. Absolutely.
Sure.
Um, I feel I kind of stressed them by focusing only on that because I really didn't care to do anything else but that.
Sure.
So yeah, that led to a couple of nice discussions. But then my parents got divorced at the same time, so I had more leeway than I should have had.
It's it's funny how you have like your family and your friends and everybody that are like constantly trying to be supportive of you and your dreams and everything, but also are a little unrealistic about like the reality of what to expect when it comes to that, where like you are going months or years or whatever without your own place or a job or whatever it is, and you're
Yeah,
just spending every moment that you can, every weekend that you can, every dollar that you have trying to chase this dream and trying to achieve your goals. Like what were your goals at the time? Like were you pursuing like a TV contract? Like obviously you're in another country from WWF, WWE, like what's what's a realistic goal for you at the time? What did you think was going to happen? Was it just I want to referee as long as I can and be involved in wrestling as much as I can, or did you know what you wanted to do?
I want to say up until the time where we purchased WXW, so up until early 2006, it was, hey, let's get the most of it as we can. Let's get in the ring with the most crazy cool names that you want to get in the ring with. Let's eventually down the road maybe get to Japan somehow and referee a show or two there. But I right up now knew I'm 6'3". I'm not going to get signed by a company,
Sure.
let alone a different country. And it very much helped that the only thing that Bill Barons ever said to me is, to be a referee, I'll never use you. So that helped to put it into perspective.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of
Um,
a freeing experience too. Like,
yeah,
when you don't have to worry about if any of the TV contract places are keeping track of what you're doing. Like, obviously, I'm sure you're a good person, everything. You're not going to go like be this immoral, crazy person or anything like that. But like, you have the freedom to do like fun wrestling or wild wrestling, or like have your own creative freedom to do whatever it is that you like. You
yeah.
kind of
And
touched on it a little bit with like like purchasing WXW in 2006. Let's just go ahead and dive in. Like please let the people who may not be familiar with WXW know what they're about and how you became involved.
yeah, WXW started at like any other promotion. So one of the guys who was wrestling at that time wanted to run wrestling shows because that's how it worked. One of the boys ran a show, the other boys got work.
Sure.
Money was an issue. So he ran Christmas Eve at a nightclub with 2 weeks' notice. And we
Hmm.
found 8 wrestlers willing enough to take the booking.
Sure.
No fans took their like it was just a nightclub. There was metal music blaring,
Hmm.
blasting. Sorry, um, there were no fans. There were just the sad people that you would expect to sit in the metal club at that
Sure.
time. But in the end, whoever was there saw the first match of Cesaro that ever happened because
Okay.
I had to drive up to Switzerland for that. And I just stuck with WXW. The promoter I hate was somebody who granted a lot of trust to people who bothered to help. So I got the chance to help with talent, have people stay with me, help them drive around, network with them. I got the chance to dabble with creative or booking just a little bit, but at the time is, okay, this is a cool match, let's do that. That's a cool finish, let's assign a match to that. So
Sure.
just easy stuff.
Not so much like you sitting down and writing like long-term storylines or anything, but just like being
didn't.
like, oh, hey, maybe you should like hook the tights here, brother.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, oh, this was a cool match. Let's do a rematch next month. Yeah, cool, do it.
Sure.
But yeah, but WXW was fun because it grew this fan base that would come back every month. So the people who watched WXW were more involved with the product than they were at any other promotion, because over there it was just like local townspeople, right?
Mm-hmm.
And WXW cared to bring in the names that I wanted to see. They cared to bring in cool American talent. They of course, they started with Hero and Quackenbush, then they brought in Ian Rotten, which was cool at 2004. I know Ian's a little bit burned right now.
Sure.
Then they started using Robbie Brookside as a champion, who had a super cool run. WXW tried everything, brought in Chikara with the crazy six-man tags. So it was something you couldn't see anywhere else. We started bringing in Japanese talent. So in 2005, I got in the ring with Misawa, Akiyama, and Kobashi, all an hour away from where I lived, which was insane because then Noah was huge, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, any one of those three names in, you know, your own home country is just like an honor to be able to be in there with them. But like to have all of, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was great. But WXW brought in whoever they could, and they drove on the concept of, let's work with outside talent and put them against the best that we have. So our people can grow, and so the outside people are the attraction, right? So of course, when Hero and Punk did the big match series, we did when Hero met Punk in Germany.
Nice.
Something like that, right?
Very cool. You mentioned how it's kind of the local townsfolk that are like the core heart of the fan base originally. What actual town did WXW originate in? Let's talk about that.
Essen. It's a town where the company is still registered to the day.
Very cool.
So it's in the middle of the rural area. It's a lot of people live in that part of Germany. And it's accessible within a maximum of 6 hours from anywhere in the country.
Sure. So I mean, just perfectly placed. Like you fly into anywhere, and you know it's a short enough drive that anybody that's a real, you know, quote unquote pro wrestler will be okay with that.
And of course, with WXW, you got a bit more involved, and once the promoter closed down shop for the 5th or 6th time because he was close to bankruptcy.
Sure.
A few of us WXW backstage or on-air people got together and made an offer to purchase the company. Like very little money at the time, but pretty much, hey, it saved his rent for half a year, so he didn't have to worry about that. So it wasn't worth more at the time, but we grew it into something.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been a small amount of money at the time, but I'm sure for you folks who were collecting your money, it was a large amount for yourselves, and it was enough, like you said, that it helped him out quite a bit, which, you know, maybe it doesn't reflect what WXW is worth now, but at the time I'm sure it was very, very generous and very worthwhile for him.
Yeah, we pulled as much as we could, and then we had a friend who owns the biggest U2 collection in the world, and he had so many items that he had two of. So he just gave them all to me in a couple of boxes, gave me a camera, and said, "Oh, take pictures of this, put them on this thing called eBay, and see what works." So so from old replicas of U2 gold discs and whatever, we funded WXW.
How weird and random is pro wrestling that like some U2 replicas and memorabilia and stuff like that would fund, you know, like one of the world-changing professional wrestling companies. Let's talk about what, you know, your first experiences were like once you were, what was your official title after you had been a part of the purchase? Like, did you have one, or was it just kind of you were all working together?
No, we were all working together, and we had this idealistic goal of, let's make sure we don't break the bank. This is the maximum amount of money we want to spend. Let's take it one show at a time. So if we have the singular show where no fan shows up, everyone still gets paid. Let's do that. Sure. And we exceeded our limit on the very first show. We found out that if you don't have the previous owner to rein in your bad ideas, you end up doing them all. And you end up doing some really shitty stuff. Like, our first event, it had Park in the opener, which was cool to have. And then for some reason, we did a 75-minute time limit draw as the semi-main event for 2 out of 3 falls tag title match of 440 kilo blue skies. Yeah, ridiculous.
Who
Yes,
who was in that 75-minute 2 out of 3 falls draw?
Aris and Joe Legend. Yeah. Um,
I bet
they,
that
they,
was
they tried super hard and it went well for 65. Like it would have went well if it was the main event, had decisive finish.
sure.
And then Joe got hurt and last 10 minutes were very bad and Dinon finished it.
Yeah. What
Uh,
was the main after that? I can't even imagine like them trying to figure out what they're gonna do to try and like get some life back
well,
into the audience.
main event was a match that a match series between two tag teams, GTS and Iceman and High Class Catch Club, which went very well in summer 2005. And we had prolonged this match series for no reason for about a year. It had lost every steam, and those guys weren't capable to do a 2 out of 3 falls match after that.
Sure. So just
Yeah,
dead in the water everywhere. Just,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
said, the old owner wasn't there to tell you when your bad ideas were going to be bad,
yeah.
and you just kind of pulled the trigger on all of them. But that's how you learn, right?
Yeah, like we had two bad shows back to back, then did an unannounced death match, which was a really cool Thumbtack Jack match, which cost us our building. So
Okay.
3 shows in, we lost we lost our home, and
Yeah.
then we brought in Doug Williams and Takashi Sugiura and Yoshinobu Kanemaru and knocked it out of the park with this crazy weekend. It also had Chad Collier and Tracy Smothers. Then we did a lightweight tournament with Ricky Marvin and Quackenbush and Ishimori and Park Generico. And from there on, it went. And a few years in, it started growing and growing and growing.
Very cool.
Um,
Like you said, it's kind of highs and lows, but
yeah,
eventually you kind of hope that you get one of those, like you said, knock it out of the park moments where it's like,
yeah,
okay, we've kind of got something figured out. Things are going well. Let's see if we can ride this momentum as long as we can.
yeah.
When do you feel like there was the real like shift between like we're trying and we're doing our best, and sometimes things are going well and sometimes things aren't, but like we've got some popularity growing. When was the shift between like trying and being successful?
I want to say 2013 because we made a gutsy decision. Like, of course, our product got a lot better from 2006 to 2012, and
Sure.
we grew a bit.
I mean,
And
even
we
just
got
distribution is a huge thing that is probably
yeah,
affecting you guys right now with streaming services becoming a thing, HD cameras becoming a
yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, go ahead, please.
But back then we were still at let's do DVDs, and we do 150 DVDs of 8 discs each for 16 carats, and we print them all at home
Hmm.
and write numbers on the labels because we didn't have a label printer at that time, and print
Sure.
out every single cover, fulfill all that. So yeah, I did that for a few years as my full-time gig.
Nice. I actually
um,
still have the Wrestling Road Diaries from Colt with his like
oh,
hand
nice,
signed like DVD and
nice.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we did it. So we did that, and I had this car full of merchandise that I would drive to every single show because we had so much stuff to sell. But still, it wasn't a company. It was still the same 3 guys running it. And we did have a GmbH, so German equivalent of a limited by now. But it was still our side act. And hey, if at the end of the year there's 2,000 euros for each of us, that's great. And if we can go to dinner after the show and have it as a company expense, great, but we didn't need to earn money. Oh, cool, we can pay ourselves 50 euros for the show. Cool. And in 2013, we saw, hey, we have 4 or 5 different promoters in Germany who want to purchase a WXW show.
Hmm.
Let's try to run a tour through Germany. And if it goes well, let's try to give one of us, Christian at the time, a full-time contract so he focuses on nothing else but growing WXW.
Yeah.
And we spent a fuck ton of money on that in the
Sure.
next 4 or 5 years. And we lost because for the first few years, you're like, oh, next year I have more shows, pre-sales are great, you're making money, and you don't realize that in the end, you're still losing money at the end of every year
Yeah.
because
The
the
bottom
pre-sales for next
dollar
year are
is
still
not
so much
making
bigger.
it. Yeah.
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 But yeah, that isn't changing because it turned into real business. And even though we were owing a lot of money when this run ended, when we consolidated the company to what it is now, it changed because then it turned into let's not run 20 shows a year, but let's run 60, 70, 80.
Yeah.
Let's have our own network. Let's have our own wrestling school and have it be a wrestling school and not setting a ring up in the gymnasium twice a month. Let's do it real. Hire people, pay them salaries, and do all the shit all the stuff that's involved.
It's okay. Hey, folks, sorry about that. A little technical difficulties, but please, we were discussing how WXW had gone from this project that you and your friends were working on that was very successful. You're traveling all over the country, trying to increase the number of shows that you're putting on, so that you can have more of income coming in, so that you can grow it into what you want it to become. Let's talk a little bit about that phase of your experience.
Yeah, that for me personally, that was a stressful time because we had to make the decision who is going to be in charge, and we felt from what we needed most, we needed somebody who was risky in his business approach and who could convince people of something is happening. So that aren't necessarily my strengths.
Okay.
I keep a very low risk, and I much more am the person who administrates stuff rather than be the entrepreneur. So what I did, I signed up with a company who taxes you for watching television.
Okay.
And collected those taxes for 2 years. Then
Nice.
I picked up a 6 hours away long distance relationship, and I did this while running WXW with the team. So that was a bit stressful for 2 years, but it was exciting because things happened. Like you went from you sell out your biggest show a year with 500 people to it goes. I think by now we are at 1,500 a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
You go from having the first tour with 6 shows in 6 towns to, oh, cool, we're running 30 different towns in the first 6 months of the year. And we're doing Czech Republic and Belgium and UK in between that. So we got to the point where all the wrestlers of WXW were doing WXW only and no other company in Germany, just to ensure that they would have enough room for the crazy schedule that we were running.
Yeah. And are they making a living at this point, or is it still kind of like wrestling money, or?
Yeah, it's still wrestling money. It's the better guys could have made a living with that, but it always depends on what do you consider making a living, right?
Sure. And like how much they're saving and how smart they're being with their money, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And especially health insurance in Germany is a big thing. You have health insurance from your regular job. Wrestling isn't a regular job, but a freelance gig. And paying health insurance out of pocket is ridiculously expensive because they want you to have a real job in Germany.
Right,
so
absolutely.
It's difficult compared to, for example, in the UK, where make your payments and they'll leave you alone. Germany won't leave you alone.
Yeah. Is there anything in the time where you guys are making this transition into becoming, like a major conglomerate like wrestling entity? Is there anything that you attribute the success to specifically? Like, what was it? Obviously, you have good wrestling, you have international stars that are coming in, you guys are very well organized and everything, but like, was there something that, if it's like, in my mind, I'm wondering if maybe it's like 16 karat or something. Was there anything in particular that it was that like really launched you guys off into that next stratosphere?
Yeah, I want to say it wasn't necessarily 16 karat, but it was the feeling that WXW created at the time. Mm-hmm. Like Christian was very good at making sure everybody was on board, knowing that right now stuff was going to blow up, and he put the right persons in the right position for that. We ended up having this very, very good roster in 2016, 2017 of very hungry guys who were willing to go up and beyond, who were ridiculously talented, but who weren't quite there, and they would grow with the company. So another one who's burned, of course, is David Starr, but David Starr was there. Walter was there. Marcel Bartel was there.
Right.
Axel Tischer, Alexander Wolf was there. Tony Storm was there. Tyler Bate was there. Mm-hmm. Chris Brooks was there. So it was so many of the guys who would just blow up in the next couple of years. Tim Thatcher, of course, has to be mentioned. Ilya Dragunov.
Yeah, Ring Conf is making a huge wave right now, obviously.
Yeah. And it was this very, very strong roster at the time, and those people kept pushing each other, and they were totally on board with going up and beyond. And at that time, we tried to save money wherever we could. So those guys were, of course, also the ring crew of the events and whatever, and everybody worked together. Sure. And I think it really helped that no matter where you were on the card there, you would be also the person lifting up the ring post and carrying it in and out of the venue. It helped everybody.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that.
Yeah, everybody belonged together. It was this community feeling, and that very much helped. And we saw each other like every Friday to Saturday, because that's when we ran shows. and the international guys like Tony and Tyler and Max and Tim, they lived in the office at the time and in the separate room there. So everybody was very close together, and that of course helped.
Yeah, that sense of community, that camaraderie, that really, really helps motivate. You see that so many times over the
Mhm.
history of professional wrestling. You know, like ECW is a really, really tight knit camaraderie family. ROH, same thing. You know, obviously yourselves. Like it's amazing how much of a positive effect it can have on the world when you actually like enjoy being around each other, which
Yeah.
kind of seems like a duh statement, right? Um, we kind of briefly mentioned 16 karat, and obviously we should definitely give it a little bit of a nod while we're discussing this. Let's tell the folks at home about what that actually is.
Yeah, 16 karat was this started in 2006. So first 16 karat was not good. Let's
Sure.
admit that. It was hey, King of Indies is super cool, TPI is super cool. Let's run a 3-day tournament in the middle of winter, short notice. 3 weeks later, you have PWG coming in who is selling out the place. It has this crazy roster, and we have nothing but Ian Rotten and Mickey Knuckles and Rocky Romero and Doug Williams.
Sure.
No knock on them, but it didn't have any of the star power compared to PWG bringing Joe and Danielson and everybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, first tournament wasn't great, and then the second tournament happened, and the week before, Alex Shane was running a tournament in the UK, and we shared talent with them. So we had this super talented roster at the time. Of course, Hero and Cesaro were coming in, and Real Saito was coming in. I want to say Generico was on the first 16 karat. Go Shiozaki was on the first 16 karat. Aoki was there. Doug Williams was there. It was so many crazy names that you wouldn't see on the same show in Germany. And every single night that we went back to the internet cafe, because at this time we didn't have smartphones or anything.
Sure.
You saw the reviews of, oh, cool, that's the greatest show I've ever seen. Next day it's the same again and again. From there, 16
like
karat.
Maybe we're doing something right. Yeah.
Yeah, it just blew up. Next year we sold out the building, and we had to turn people away with a sellout crowd of 300. And then after a few years, we started adding stuff to 16 karat. Hey, let's play a soccer match, wrestlers against fans before that. Let's do an after show party where one of the wrestlers' dads barbecues for us, and we all sing karaoke and get drunk. Let's do
Not a bad idea.
Q&A session at a cafe at the Central right before Fußball Bundesliga is on. Let's do a podcast at night. Let's do another show the day before in front of an old venue. So we do something at the Academy with no production, and it's like meet all the stars in front of 150 people. And it grew and grew and grew to the festival that it is now, or that at least it has been until 2020, and that we hope to restart in 2022.
It's crazy that like I wasn't super involved with WWE at the time, but like you're almost creating access before access is a thing, at least as far as I know. Yeah, like you kind of see the writing on the walls. Like, yeah, we have this collection of people that are here to enjoy the product that we're putting on, but why only try and entertain them for the like 6-hour time slot of the 3 days that we've designated for the tournament? Why not try and just make it a great experience for them the whole time that they're there? It's a fantastic idea.
Like 16 karat is great. It's like what we went for is market is as a wrestling festival, because it's that it gives you the chance to dive into this wrestling thing for 72 hours and not worry about your regular life. Do nothing but wrestling and do nothing but be around wrestling people. And at that weekend, I think we like half the hotel rooms in the city of Oberhausen, I rented to WXW people because it grew into this thing.
Very cool. We've talked a lot about what was going on with WXW as an entity over this time, but we haven't really talked too much about what you specifically are doing. Obviously, you're one of the admin people that are, like getting everything organized and stuff like that. But like, this is obviously geared towards referees. What's your referee experience throughout this whole thing? Are you still reffing regularly? Are you reffing all the shows? I think you're senior referee at this point, right?
Yeah, I'm that. I think only our ring announcer is using that term. Like,
sure.
I think it's like the whole senior referee thing usually is, oh, let's give one of the refs a rub that he doesn't really need, but he enjoys, right? Like, if it's not used on air, like, why do it?
A senior referee basically is another way of saying this guy's been here the longest, let him pick who does what.
I refereed the whole time. when we started doing so many shows and I had a relationship on the job on the side, I didn't do all the shows anymore, so I would skip a couple of the smaller town shows.
Hmm.
But I think I haven't missed many big WXW shows over the whole 20 years. Like of the big ones, definitely less than 5, I want to
Sure.
say. I
That's
spent
amazing in and of itself. Go ahead.
yeah, I spent 116 carat getting ridiculously sick with some kind of flu. And I refereed the first night and didn't feel well. I refereed the second night. And after the first night, I told the guys, yo, I'm the absolute worst.
I'm out.
Please take me
Yeah.
off the show. And the third day, I couldn't even drive back home from the hotel because I was so sick. And I missed the whole show. So yeah, that was one of the 5.
Probably a
yeah,
good decision though.
100%. But yeah, I stayed refereeing the whole time. That's what I really enjoy about wrestling. And I've never stopped enjoying it. So independently of what else I do at shows, I never stop refereeing.
Sure.
I feel at times I wouldn't give the refereeing as much attention that I would have liked. For example, I wouldn't sit in before certain matches and listen to everything that I could listen to. And I would get away with being experienced enough to know the people I'm working with and doing it not completely on the fly, but mostly on the fly rather than making sure to be too involved. But like for the big matches, I still get as involved as Tom wants me to be.
Sure. Makes sense. Obviously you're very involved with like all of the organization and you're refereeing there as well. Are you still traveling to other places at all and refereeing anywhere else, or is your life WXW from 2006 until now?
No, like for the first couple of years, I tried to get onto other shows as much as I could. So, for example, when Walter was defending the WXW or winning the WXW title from Daisuke in Japan, I flew with Walter to Japan and picked up a week's worth of shows there because
very cool.
Why wouldn't you do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I did this terrible Ultimate Warrior comeback match in Spain. Have you seen that?
No,
I did that show. Yeah,
but I'll take it. I'll take a look now.
Cool. I did that show. I'm super happy I didn't referee it, but I ended up working in front of 16,000 people before Warrior and entered. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 16,000 people, no matter where you are, is pretty insane. And to be on a whole nother continent in front of that many people is quite an opportunity.
Yeah, but that was super cool. But over time, the more WXW grew, the less outside of WXW I'm doing. So I want to say in the last 5 years, I've done the Progress shows in Germany because they were before WXW shows, and we just kept their costs down by using local referees. So I did those. I did one show in England. They did Tetsujin, that's a shoot style brand, and they labeled it after our shoot style brand Ambition. And I couldn't do their first show, so I made sure to do their very last one. I did that. That was cool. What else? I did a small German indie called GHW when my best friend retired. I refereed his last match. And I did a few shows around Mania when we were in New York. And that's
I think we ran into each other then, actually. Yeah,
well, that was a fun week.
Great week. You obviously have a very unique experience where you have an extensive experience as a referee and obviously as an admin promoter, organizer, COO now. What kind of advice do you have for people that may be trying to not necessarily follow in your footsteps, but like create their own, path as far as like establishing a company or like even just as people, referees on the independent scene that are trying to like follow their own path? What kind of advice do you offer to folks?
It's a two-step thing. First is right now you have the chance to learn from people who know how to do business right. You have the chance to get properly trained in most places, and I feel there's a lot of people in our generation that are willing to help. So make use of that while you can, but still do your own thing. Like I've made every single mistake I could do as a referee as well as a promoter. Like very sure every single one. And I think from one's mistakes, the person grows. So I feel nowadays it's very hard to make those experiences, make those mistakes because everything ends up being shared everywhere. Everything ends up being videotaped and filmed and being put out there on Twitter and Facebook.
You can't hide in the fact that, like I drew 6 people to, Connecticut or something like that because it'll be online tomorrow. Yeah.
or here's this clip of this ridiculous thing I've tried in the ring and almost killed myself and two opponents and fell into a fan. I should have never done this, but now
And now
it's
I'm
on there.
super viral, and that's all anybody's ever going to know me as, because
Yeah.
that's what I got famous for first. Yeah, totally understand.
Plus, I feel especially when you're young, you want to push boundaries of what culture is and what art is.
Sure.
So you try to tend to be a little insensitive at times and push things. And
yeah,
I want to say in 2000, 2005, you could do that without there being too much of a fuss, but somebody yelling at you. And nowadays, this could ruin your career. So you have to be more careful than our generation was back then. I feel that that's also part of it. We're all more sensible and sensitive nowadays. So it's both.
PC and cancel culture are definitely a very real thing, and like they're based in, you know, like it comes from a good place, but yeah, it can definitely tank any kind of potential that you have if you, like you said, make some of those stupid mistakes that, you know, like you learned from in the past, but now it can come around and bite you.
Yeah, like my business partner Felix, when we were in the middle of the speaking out thing, he went like, hey, if we're honest to each other, we know that probably most of the guys that if you celebrate as big influential guys from the 80s, either in football or in wrestling or in music, if speaking out had been around at the time, and if people had known as much, all of those guys would be burned. And
yeah, absolutely.
This is also a thing. So I feel your general behavior, not only around wrestling, but around life, needs to have more of a focus than it would have been 20 years ago. So that would be a piece of advice. But yeah, do your own thing. I think always trying to please everyone and be the nicest and just doing things the way you're told, that's also isn't the way to go if you want to do something new and if you want to excel at what you do.
Yeah, I've definitely found that in my experience, the people who listen and play by the rules and make nice, they can have long and illustrious careers just like anybody else can, because wrestling, there is no A plus B equals C. But I have found more often that the people who listen but then take that with a grain of salt and kind of forge their own path, those are the people that are going to find the most success. I found out really early on, you know, like I was watching the people that were successful and I was like, okay, they're going to different schools, they're going to different companies, they're going to different cities and states and people and things like that. And like a lot of pro wrestling culture kind of insists on you having this like loyalty and family to like your original company and your original school and your original territory and stuff like that. And like it's true to an extent, because you do want to know where you came from and you want to try and have a good impression that you give to the rest of the world of the place that you came from. But like wrestling should be all about getting out to the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel a lot of those things that you get taught or have been established as a way to control whoever is new.
Yes.
Like make sure people stay in place, are in place, don't exceed too much. And I feel
don't threaten what I've created by creating your own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I feel a lot of the good companies and good schools, they have the goal of their, or if you're not WWE or New Japan, but if you're a good independent company, your goal is have your talent move on to a different place.
Yeah.
If you're a good wrestling school, your goal should be have the wrestler become better than me, his trainer. That this should be your goal, and this should be your validation, because you help this guy becoming better than yourself could have ever been, right?
Absolutely. Everything should be an evolution from, you know, if you're in a school or a company or anything like that that is, you know, keeping you stagnant and is holding you and trying to tell you, oh, you can't work here because X, Y, and Z. You know, obviously sometimes there are companies that will try and tell you like, don't work here. And it is legitimate because it's a place that they know, you know, like if it's a money mark or a work or something like that. And like those pieces of advice are good, but there is definitely a lot of people in professional wrestling that will try and hinder you and hold you tight to them so that it doesn't affect their bottom dollar or anything like that. Have you personally had a lot of experience with training, you know, referees? Have you taught wrestlers? Like, what has been your experience as a teacher?
I've trained a couple of referees. I want to say I trained most of the good referees that have stuck with WXW. So I helped those guys in, hey, this is what a referee is. This is how you work with cameras. This is how you try to be a character, but not too big of a character, but still be important and not just a guy in a shirt that can be replaced.
That was actually something I found really interesting when we were doing the Q&As in Zebra Talk. Felix, yourself, Rainer, you guys all kind of mentioned how like, you you're not over the top, like, look at me characters, but like you
Mhm.
do have a name and a character behind who
Yeah.
you are at your company, and I appreciate that. Do you feel like that was something that is just the culture where you are, and that's how things are in German wrestling, or was that something that was influenced by you, or how do you feel like that came about in your environment?
I feel it's something that no other German company is doing but WXW. Of
Hmm.
course, there will be this company where, hey, this guy's a heel referee and he does that, but that's
Sure,
not what we're looking at.
but that's not what we're talking about here,
No,
obviously.
no.
Yeah.
It's be a character. I feel it's the same way when you watch a football match
Okay.
or a soccer match. The referee is important, and there are different referees. They have different styles.
Right.
And in old catch wrestling, the referees used to have gimmicks. There was Didi Gap, who was this rather large Frenchman who
Okay.
would get taken advantage of. There was Mick McMichael from Scotland who wear a skirt and all that. And I feel it helps if you have 3 or 4 different referees with different strengths. So it matters who officiates the match of which character,
Yeah.
because they're going to act differently towards the character. And if you need this out of control, out of bounds heel, then you put the weakest referee in there,
Sure.
despite him not being the weakest guy, but he's the best at portraying the role where he uses authority. Or you put
Right.
Ryder in there, whose gimmick and character is that he just doesn't mind,
Sure.
which always helps.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
like that.
I think that helps to have that. It gives you another layer without going heel or face, or this guy's going to support this guy. It's not about that. It's everyone has a different style of officiating, and it helps the matches to develop.
Yeah, it helps add another layer of the storytelling because,
Yeah.
back in the day, it's a very common example, but like if you were watching an Earl Hebner match, you
Mhm.
immediately assumed, okay, this is going to be a very high profile match. He's going to be
Yeah.
very strict and make sure that, like, no BS is going on because
Mhm.
like this is
Mhm.
their, like, top level, like this is the guy
Mhm.
that they put in when things are really important. Or like Nick Patrick, you see him go into a WCW match and you're like, oh
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
Nick's in there. Maybe this is gonna
Yeah.
turn into some BS at the end, like blah blah
Yeah.
blah, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's not about making them the focus. It's just another layer of like, maybe my baby face is gonna get screwed by the end of this match. That
Yeah.
stinks. Let's like root for them even harder so that
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Um, we are kind of winding down time a little bit. I do like to offer my guests an opportunity for like the last 5 minutes or so. If you have any shows that you feel need a look from folks that haven't really gotten the opportunity yet, if you have any wrestlers, referees, anybody that you think deserves a little bit of a spotlight for a moment that the rest of the professional wrestling world hasn't really taken notice of yet. And then obviously go ahead and plug your own socials, WXW, anything you like. The next 5 minutes is yours. Go ahead.
Cool. Thank you. Um, I want to say European wrestling or continental European wrestling has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years with a lot of high profile wrestlers like Walter, like Ilya, like Marcel Bartel, like Alexander Wolf going to NXT or NXT UK. So the roster right now is very fresh and mainly compiled of people who most wrestling fans won't be knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel about half of our roster hasn't done a singular event where WXW fans has been having the audience.
Sure.
And those are our main guys right now. So it's a very fresh and new product. This leads to a lot of people not being known. Like, of course, if you follow a little bit of German wrestling, Marius Alani is really good right now. And that's all right. I'm not going to plug the likes of his. But for example, Fast Time Mudo is an amazing talent. He's this third level black belt guy with, of course, insane kicks, but also a very interesting wrestling style. A bit on the epic side of his facial expressions, but yeah, he'll be one of the guys to carry continental European wrestling in the next couple of years.
Fantastic.
There's a ton of really good wrestlers from Hungary.
I actually just heard about Hungarian wrestling for the first time today. I'm actually really glad that you're bringing this up. Please tell me.
It's a thing. Icarus and Dover have been branching out as the areas of Hungary for a couple of years, but they've trained, I want to say, around about 10 wrestlers who all are good enough to be on every single European wrestling show. They have a female wrestler, Eva Kolaski, who is going to be opening a lot of eyes, and she'll definitely be a star if she doesn't get hurt. She hasn't even been shown on WXW product so far, so that's a bit of a spoiler there. There's really cool wrestling in France. I think Tristan Archer, he was on the Cruiserweight Classic as Clement Video. He has reinvented himself and he is ready to be signed. Of course, Senza Volto, people know about in Europe so far, even though not enough of them. Aigle Blanc is this really amazing big version of rotation, I want to say. Very interesting wrestler that is going to go places. There's a lot of interesting talent on the current WXW shows that should be seen. So how do you see them? Great. It's there on WXW Now. It's our streaming service with an increasingly big delay there on the WWE Network or Peacock as well. So you could also watch them without paying an extra 10 euros for WXW Now, but we appreciate that, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, WXW is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us. I'm very sure I don't need to mention the handles.
Sure.
Personally, I don't do social media much. I have a Twitter account. That's about it. It's under my full name. It's Tassilo Jung. And you can follow me on Twitter there. I'll tweet only in German, which is probably a bit of a turn off to a bit of the US. But Twitter has this very cool auto-translate feature.
Which is amazing. If folks don't know about that already, like there's like he's saying, there's an auto translate feature. You just
awesome, right?
Yeah, amazing. Like especially when I was in Japan for a few weeks, like being able to actually see what people are saying is incredible. Yeah, just open up the text bubble. There's a little button right down at the bottom, boom, and it's actually a decent translation. Not trying to mess around with Google Translate.
Yeah, it's fine, guys. If Daisuke Ikeda likes my tweets, and have this Futin Bati account like my tweet all the time, you can understand that too.
Yeah.
Because his English isn't great.
Yeah. I actually was thinking about that before we started recording today, because like my family is German. I did study German like in high school for a couple of years, and I was like, can I do my intro in German, or am I just going to sound like a 5-year-old to this guy today? So I erred on the side of caution. But
oh, don't worry, I'll talk with my heavy accent all the time. I don't mind. If you want to go out and check one WXW match as the recommendation, here's a weird one. We did Daisuke Ikeda and Yuki Ishikawa in a Battle Arts match on our Ambition show. And despite both of them guys being in their 50s, that was absolutely crazy and insane and blew all of us away. That's on last year's Ambition show, so Ambition from 2020. That's the one to check out. It's 10, 12 minutes, and it's absolute insanity.
Well, I guess I know what I'm doing as soon as I end the recording today. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciated you, giving me your time and being willing to be a part of this. It's great seeing people who have, come up through the referee community and found a measure of success and then turning that back around and giving back to us. You were part of the Q&A series. You're a part of this now as well. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, if you would like to support the Zebra Talk Fund, you can find us on prowrestlingtees.com/Zebra Talk. You can find us on all the socials at Zebra Talk 123. I'm on all the socials as Odie1Canody. You can find me on Facebook as Robert Odie Brown. And if you're a referee and you have not been added to the Zebra Talk group yet, please find me. We'll get you in there and you can start interacting with some amazing people like Tassilo and many, many, many others that will have an insane amount of wealth to information to offer you. Wealth. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, and folks, have a great day, and thanks for listening.